Hello, good day. Welcome to a bright new day. We can notice something. Our hen actually grew fatter. I guess he ate a lot of food last night. Okay, today we'll be discussing project scope management. Now, what's actually the scope of a project? Now, in the scope of a project, you are trying to know what are we to do on the project. We are trying to stick to things necessary to achieve a project. That we don't want to do tasks that are not important for the project. So now let's discuss it with our guy here. Now, the project scope management. Now, we are trying to know the process that is required to ensure that the project includes all the work required and only the work required to complete the project. Someone might say we are lazy that we don't want to include the work, other works that are not even required. But we are trying to, for now, remember we are trying to battle with cost, time, resources. So we are just sticking to only the work required. So now this is actually broken into like the previous video which we discussed project integration management. Project scope management is also broken down into six divisions. So now let's start. So this is the image about of the various divisions. We have the plant scope management, the collect requirements, define scope, creates WBS, validate scope and control scope. So now the first one, let's start with plant scope management. Now when we're actually trying to plant scope management, we are trying to define, validate and control the scope of a project. Now we want to build a house, digging the ground, pegging the ground. Yeah, these are items that are fine. They can be in a scope documentation. Now, so we are actually defining them, we are validating them. But if someone comes and I don't maybe it's one way or the other, someone adds frying fish to a scope of the project, we can cancel that out. We can invalidate it. So this is what we're actually doing in the scope management. So now we're actually trying to plan the scope management. So the output of this would be a scope management plan. So now we'll start with what are the inputs to actually get this. Now we need a project management plan, which you know now. The project management plan discusses on how projects will be executed, monitored, and controlled. It can also include some subsidiary plans, now like the cost baseline, the scope baselines, and the rest. Now we can also bring on board the project charter. Remember, a project charter is a document that formally initiates a project so that the project can know the boundaries and the PM knows the kind of resources can pull from the organization. We also bring in the EEFs, that's the enterprise environmental factors, the factors on a project which the project do not have power over, like government policies, market conditions, and the rest. Then bring in the OPAs, data bank. I always refer to the OPA as the data bank. It's because that's what it is. Historic informations, defect and issue management, all these data. We just bring it out from the OPAs. So, what are our tools and technique? Also, we have our expert judgments. We call in the experts. So, we are trying to do this. What's actually going to be needed for this work to be done? We are trying to build a house. Should he go to the market and buy clothes? The experts will tell you that's needful, that's not needful. It's left for you to decide or the consultants to decide. So you call in the experts. Then also you can also sit down, have meetings with consultant, SMEs, experts, and the rest. Then what then is the output? The output is a scope management plan. Now, the scope management plan should have contained process for preparing a detailed project scope statement. It should also have process for enabling the creation of the WBS. You will ask me what's WBS now. WBS is work breakdown structure. Now, what would I look at a sample breakdown structure later on in the series. Now, a work breakdown structure tries to break down the work into bits. Maybe you'd say you can now document digging the ground, pegging, pegging the layout. All these are actually work, but you're breaking down step by step. Then also you can um, we can identify the processes that specify how formal acceptance of the project will be obtained. Now, are we going to go to at length for acceptance, or are we going to call a consultant for acceptance? So this should also be in our project management, a scope management plan. So let us go on. The next one is to collect requirements. Now, collecting requirements, you're trying to determine, document, and manage the stakeholder needs for and the requirements to meet the project objective. The house should be yellow. The house, but it's a duplex. So you're actually trying to get what are the objectives of the project. The one of the objectives of the project is to build a duplex. And the next, and that a duplex that is yellow. So these are the objectives of the project. So we are trying to just document and determine what are the objectives of the project. What then are the inputs? Now we bring in the scope management plan. Now the scope management plan tries to expatiate on how the project team will determine the requirements for the project. Then also bring in the requirements management plan. Requirement management plan provides the processes that will be used that will be it provides the process that will be used throughout the collect requirements process. Now, what are why is we actually trying to define and document the stakeholder needs. That's what requirements management plan is for. Then also we have the stakeholder management plan. The stakeholder management plan is used to understand the stakeholder communication requirements and the level of stakeholder engagement. Now, we have many stakeholders on a project. Should we always run to, assuming the project is to be financed by 5 different organizations, do we always need to run to company A for this, company B for that? So you also bring in these documents, you also bring in a project charter and a stakeholder register. The stakeholder register is just a stakeholder register identifies the stakeholders and the people that we can actually that have information as that needs information to a particular process. We also have the tools and technique. Now, under the tools and technique, now we can actually go on interviews. Now, you meet your project team members or the stakeholders one by one, discuss with them. No, we are trying to do this. How do we go about this? You're actually collecting the requirements for the project. Then also you can also do what we call focus groups. Now we call people, maybe you can call, assuming you're building a software for a company, you can come and call in the FI guys, that's the finance guys from the finance department. You tell them, sit down, okay, what do you want the software to do for you? Now that's a focus group in the picture. And also you can have facilitated workshop. Now you bring different stakeholders like in the form of a meeting, but this is more interactive. Now you can and most likely you give it a nice name like joint application design, quality function deployment, voice of the customers. So these are facilitated workshops. Then we also have group creative techniques. Now you bring people in for a meeting, and tell them, yeah, brainstorm, think over this issue and get back to me. That's brainstorming. We also have the nominal group technique. Now it's actually an enhancement on the brainstorming, which you vote and the highest ranking ideas is actually implemented. Then also we have idea mapping. Your actual after the brainstorming section, you can map ideas into various categories. Then also we have affinity diagram, which allows multiple ideas to fall into a category. Then we also have multi-criteria decision analysis. You're actually trying to utilize a decision matrix to provide an approach for establishing criteria. Now, you might want to say, okay, now, what are the risk level for this? What is the cost level for this, and so on. Then also we have group decision making techniques. Now, when you call for a meeting, people can sit down and do, and after the meeting they can vote. Now, in on a meeting, now everybody agrees on a single course of action. That's anonymity. Then in majority, we after there is a vote, the idea that has the highest rank or the highest vote, that's the one that gets implemented. Then we also have plurality. This is where the decision is reached based on the largest block of in the group that decides, and we have dictatorship, where one individual makes the decision for the group. So now we can also have questionnaires and surveys. You share questionnaires out to the stakeholders and the project team. They fill it out and return it. So you can raise that. You can also have surveys. One of the surveys we most these days we do electronic surveys, create survey questions on the network and share it out. Then they answer it. You can use your Google Docs to actually do that. Then also we have observation. Now, then also you can do prototype and benchmarking. What then is the output of this particular process? Now we're trying to document requirements. Now we want to know of how the requirements on each project will need the business need. Then also we should know the stakeholder requirements, which stakeholder needs what, the solution requirements, whether it's functional or non-functional, whether it's a technological or just a standard compliance, or is it supportive or is it training. So these are things you should know as a project manager. So another thing we need is this would also have is this requirements traceability matrix. Now look at an example of such documents. Now we can describe a requirement here. We can now talk about the business needs. These requirements, what is it needed from the project? Then which of the project objectives actually meets these requirements? Then we also talk about the work breakdown structure deliverable that actually produces or that actually meets these requirements also. And we also have a product design, a product development, and a test case. If we are to test this particular when we develop the WBS, and actually when we test it, we can now talk about the test case, give it a number, so that maybe it's going to be tested by maybe consultant B. I write his name here. After this guy is done, the consultant B can test it. Then the third one is define scope. In define scope, this is the process of developing. You're actually developing a detailed description of the product. So now what then are the inputs? We have the scope management plan. Now the scope management plan, it's a component of the project management plan. It establishes the activities for the project. They also have the project charter. Project charter is a document that formally initiates the project. We also have the requirement documentation, which are used to select the requirements for the project. What then are the tools and technique? We have the expert judgment, which can be from consultants, SMEs, rest. Also, we have product analysis. In product analysis, we sit down, say, what is the final product? It's a house. We analyze the product and say, what are the steps required to do this? That's product analysis. Like now, you have the picture of a house in your head. You say, what are the steps required to achieve this? First of all, you need to dig the ground. Second, you need to peg the ground. These are actually defining the scope of the project. So let's go. We have alternative generation. Then now alternative generation. Now you're actually trying to find alternative for a business for a particular um option. Now you want assuming we take on digging the ground with hand. You can come and also criticize it. Is there no other better way of digging the ground? Maybe we can use machines or the rest. That's alternative generations. You actually generate an alternative to a particular option. And also we have facilitated workshops where we can go meetings and have something nice. We sit down and brainstorm over an issue. Then what then is the output? We should have a project scope statement. Now the project scope statement tries to describe the project scope and the major deliverables on the project. Now you should have the accepted criteria of the project and the deliverables of the project. And then we have project exclusion. The project exclusion has to do with what should be excluded from the project. We are building a duplex. You shouldn't have a penthouse. That's an exclusion. You can also have constraints. What are the constraints on this project? Is final? Are we constrained under constraints by final, cost, or time? Then also, what are the assumptions of the projects? We also bring them on board. Now, we also create the WBS after identifying the scope. Now, the WBS is a worker breakdown structure. Right now, in the WBS, we're trying to this is the process of subdividing the product deliverables into smaller units. Now we break it into various units and we create a WBS document. Now what are the inputs? We bring in the project management plan, the project scope statement, we bring in the requirement documentation, we bring in the EF and the OPA. Remember our OPA is just a data bank. Then what are the tools and techniques used to achieve this? Now we can use decomposition. Now if you say the first step is digging, what does digging entail? It's in first of we are trying to remember we're trying to build a duplex and we say digging. When we want to decompose it, we can identify sub-tasks under digging. One can be pegging the ground. After that you do excavation. After that you do blinding. You blind with cement, then later you can lay your foundation. You have actually decomposed digging into smaller tasks. Then also you can use expert judgment. Now see a sample WBS. Now we have a task, we break it down into various divisions and break division, this particular subdivision into further divisions. So now this can be actually building the house. This one can be digging. Under digging we have pegging, we have excavation, we have blinding, we have laying of blocks. So that's what we the tools and techniques when we are trying to create a WBS. Now, what should be the output? We should have a scope baseline. Now, this is the approved version of the project statement and the WBS. That's what a scope baseline is. So let's go further. Then also we should have a WBS. Now I've shown you what a sample is. The sample WBS is. I've shown you what a sample WBS is. Then also we should have a WBS dictionary. A WBS is high level, but in WBS dictionary we actually drill in details about the information, the description of the work, the assumptions and the constraints, the responsible person or organization, the schedule milestone, the associated schedule activity, and so on. WBS dictionary, it's a build upon on the WBS. In WBS you discuss in details, just like a dictionary. Dictionary explains a word in details. Then also you can update some of our project documents. Then the next one, that's the fifth division under the project scope management, is to validate scope. Now, in validating scope is the process you actually formalize the process of formalizing acceptance of projects of completed project deliverables. Now, the reason for this is that you're actually trying to bring the objectivity of the acceptance process and increase the chance of the final product actually coming out. Now, we actually, when we say we are going to dig the ground, has the ground been dug? Has the ground been dug already? So we try to validate the scope if it has been done. What then are the inputs? We bring in the project management plan. Now, the project management plan is a document that describes how the project will be monitored, executed, and controlled. We also bring in the requirement documentation. We bring in the requirement traceable matrix, the verified deliverable, the work performance data. Remember what work performance data is? Work performance data has to do with raw information to generate on the project. Like 50% of the work has been achieved, we have spent 70% of our resources. These are our performance data. Now we look at tools and technique to validate a scope. We look at how we do inspection. We go around our site and see as this have contractors have done the digging. That's actually an inspection, a way of inspecting. Now, if it's in a software, like you're building a software, you can call in experts to actually check whether they're actually working in line. Then also, you can do group decision making techniques. Now, you sit down in groups and you make decisions whether these guys are are contractors, are designers, are developers, are they actually doing it? So now, what then we have our outputs. Our outputs, we should be able to verify or accept some deliverables. We have finished digging. We can come and look at it and wow, you guys have finished the digging stage. I've accepted it. You should also make change requests. Something happened, maybe one of the pillars bent. You can make a change request for the pillar to be broken down and be rebuilt. That's a change request. You also have the work performance information, which is the build up on the work performance data, and the project document updates. Project document update has to do with any project document that can be updated within the course of the project. Now, the last one is the control scope. In control scope, this is the process of monitoring the status of your project and managing changes to the scope baseline. You're actually trying to make sure that what was defined earlier on is what is in the is according to the project baseline. What then are the inputs? You bring in the project management plan. Now we are trying to know the scope baseline, the cost baseline, the change management plan, the configuration management plan. Remember, I differentiated the differentiated what change management and what change management and what configuration management is. And also bring in the requirement documentation and requirement traceable matrix. Then also we should bring in the work performance data and the OPAs. Now you should be careful, the EEF is not in this place. Now because most likely you have been hearing me in the input I always say the EEF and the OPA, but yeah it's the EEF is not here. So then what are the tools and techniques? Now we have what we call the variance analysis. In variance analysis, you're trying to measure the degree of difference between the actual work done and what's in the baseline. You said that 50 in 6 months time, 50% of the work would have been accomplished. But now you're in 6 months time, I have accomplished only 20%. So now you can see that there's a variance by like 30%. Then also we look at the output. How we should be able to generate some work performance information. We also should be able to make some change requests. Now, when we have to make actually build on our work performance data, we have work performance information. From this information, we can make change requests. We also can have project management updates and also update some project documents. Then also update some OPAs. That is all for project scope management. So now let's look at some sample questions. Oh, it's too tiny. Let me zoom on it. Okay, the process of determining, documenting, and managing stakeholder needs and requirements to meet the project objective is known as plan scope management, collect requirements, control scope, validate scope. Now, I remember what I talked about collect requirements. In collecting requirements, we are just determining, documenting, and managing the stakeholder needs to meet the project objectives. Now, Second question goes, the scope management plan is included in which of the following documents? It's a simple one. Remember, it's a subsidiary plan, and the subsidiary plan is actually in the PM plan, the project management plan. So this is what your PM exam would look like. It was just simple questions like this. Don't get scared, because if you go through the tutorials, you should be able to answer and pass your PMP exam. So let's go to the third question. Project scope. Now, project scope is of concern only at the start of the project. I don't think so. That's not true, because I need to know my boundaries throughout the project. So it's not only needed at the start of the project. So project scope is mainly a problem to be handled by change control procedures during the project execution phase. Um, the next answer. It should be managed and controlled from the project concept through closing. Yeah, that one I agree with it. But let's see the next question. Project scope is usually not a problem after contract or other document authorizing the project has been approved. That's cool. But C is definitely correct. So I'm sticking with C. If you have any other answer, just comment below and I'll be able to discuss further. Okay. Now, project charter is created by the project manager, the sponsor, the president of a functional management group, or the customer. Now, most likely, now remember, project charter is done during the initiation phase. Now, what actually happens? Remember, in project charter, we're just trying to formally initiate a project and give adequate power for the project now, so that the PM will be able to pull out the resources. Most likely, the PM is not the one actually doing this document. It's the sponsor that is actually doing it, because he would be able to know what a particular amount of resources that he can pull out from the organization for the project. So the project manager doesn't prepare the project charter; it's the sponsor that prepares it. Okay, thank you again for watching my tutorial, audio tutorial. Please like the video and do not forget to invite your friends to subscribe to the channel and learn PMP. If they're interested in another management course, they can also let me know and I'll get back to them. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Have a nice day.